News is really starting to pick up as we are now around 48 hours away from the NHL trade deadline. We have another trade to talk about today, and I'll be honest, this one surprised me a little bit, not because of the player that's involved. This is a guy that I think a lot of us knew there was probably a good chance he does get traded. It's the return of this trade that really shocked me. So the Florida Panthers have acquired forward Vladimir Tarasenko. Ottawa is retaining 50% of Tarasenko's $5 million cap hit, so he's on the books for Florida at just $2.5 million, and in return, the Ottawa Senators receive a 2025 third-round pick and a conditional 2024 fourth-round pick, which will turn into a third if the Panthers win this year's Stanley Cup. Really underwhelming return for the Ottawa Senators, in my opinion, especially if they were going to retain salary on Tarasenko. I figured he was going to be able to fetch them at the very least a second-round draft pick and maybe a B-level prospect or maybe even a first. The St. Louis Blues were able to get more for Tarasenko last season, despite the fact that his cap hit was higher at the time, and I think you can make the argument that this season for Ottawa, Tarasenko is having a better year than the year he was having for St. Louis last year before he was traded. We just saw the Washington Capitals trade Anthony Mantha yesterday, retaining 50% of his deal. They were able to land a better return than what Ottawa got for Tarasenko, which is really surprising to me. Now, that being said, Vladimir Tarasenko does have a full no trade clause, so based off of this return Ottawa was able to get, you have to imagine the list of teams Tarasenko was willing to be traded to was short. That's really the only thing I can think of as to why the Florida Panthers were able to get Tarasenko for so cheap here. I'm sure Senators fans are a little bit disheartened by this return, but at the end of the day, if Vladimir Tarasenko was only willing to go to a couple of different teams, then those teams were not going to offer up the kitchen sink for the Ottawa Senators. They were going to lowball them, and I think that's what happened here. Vladimir Tarasenko is a pending UFA. If he wasn't going to sign an extension with the Senators, they're not a playoff team this year. It makes sense to get at least something for him as opposed to nothing and letting him walk in free agency, but I'd definitely be lying if I said I wasn't really surprised when I initially seen this trade and saw the low cost Florida had to pay to get Tarasenko. So those are my thoughts on the return that the Senators were able to get for Vladimir Tarasenko. Let's now shift focus and talk a little bit about this trade from the Florida Panthers side of things. The Panthers are having an unbelievable season. Even before this trade, a lot of people had the Florida Panthers at the very top of the list of Stanley Cup favorites this year, and they just got even scarier. Vladimir Tarasenko really fills out the Florida Panthers top six nicely. You're not going to change that top line of Barkov, Reinhart, and Verhaeghe. They have been so dominant together all season long, but Vladimir Tarasenko should slot in beautifully on the right side of Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk. Is Vladimir Tarasenko the dominant goal-scoring top-line winger that he was for so many years in St. Louis? No, but at 32 years old, he is still a very useful offensive weapon. He's got 17 goals in 57 games this season. He's going to score 20 plus for the 8th time in his career. His playmaking has been strong this season as well. This is a player that definitely still pushes play in the right direction offensively. He's also a proven playoff performer. He's won a Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues. He's got 44 goals in 97 career playoff games, and for the Florida Panthers this season, that is what it's all about, the playoffs. And they have so many other offensive weapons on this team. Sam Reinhart's having a career year. Barkov's been dominant. Tkachuk has really started to heat up throughout the month of February and also into early March. He had 3 assists last night. In my opinion, this is really a perfect scenario for Vladimir Tarasenko. He's going to a team in Florida where he's not going to have to play too big of a role. Like I mentioned before, he should slot in on that second line, and with all the other offensive talent that Florida has, he should be able to fly under the radar, get easier matchups, and be a really productive player for them. I really like this fit for the Florida Panthers, and of course the cherry on top is the fact that they only had to give up a 3rd round draft pick and a conditional 4th round draft pick to land him. For a team like the Florida Panthers, who don't really have many top draft picks or top prospects anymore, that is absolutely huge to be able to get an impact player like this for so cheap. So those are pretty much all of my thoughts on the trade that sent Vladimir Tarasenko from the Ottawa Senators to the Florida Panthers. As always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, especially if you're a fan of either the Florida Panthers or the Ottawa Senators. Sound off down below in the comments. Let me know how you're feeling about this trade. If you guys have been enjoying these trade breakdowns and you're excited to see more over the next 48 hours, then be sure to leave this video a like. That is definitely the best way to let me know that you enjoyed and the best way to show your support. It definitely helps with the videos a ton. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all again soon.